Good afternoon, folks. This is Mark Fitzpatrick from the Tiger Club of Kansas City. Today is Tuesday, September 4th. Our guest speaker today, longtime MU insider Brian Neuner. Brian, you were great today. Insights for the fans. Thanks for coming out.
Thanks for having me. It's been a while. I got out of the broadcast game and had an opportunity to kind of get back in as a writer, doing something for Power Mizzou and MUTigers.com. Gabe DeArmond, who runs Power Mizzou, he was a former student of mine. So I asked him if I could do a story on Drew Lock. I didn't feel that a lot of people knew Drew, that he was very guarded. And so I talked to his father, Andy Locke, who we went to school together, and I said, hey, I'd like to, drill down to several layers. And Andy talked to his son, told him he could trust me, and then it took off from there. It's a lot of fun writing it because I enjoyed writing it, but I really enjoyed talking to the people, the sources we had, from Andy Reid and Dirk Cutter, NFL coaches, to Drew's sister, and how her famous brother is impacting her life, and it brought a lot of the Mizzou family full circle.
You have seen Drew develop, being friends with his dad, of course, see him develop. He has really seemed to take ownership of this team. This is his team.
Yeah, I think you got to think about all the moving parts around him, Mark. Why didn't this happen sooner? Well, there's so much change around him. If you think of any job you're in, and if your boss is always changing, how can you really get comfortable? Even with all his talent, he still felt like he always had to prove himself, and maybe didn't have that voice. Maybe the coaches said, your voice, we want, but he just didn't feel it. This year he feels it. He's got a great relationship with his offensive line. I mean, they're his buddies, and I think he's always been a confident young man, but now he's sharing it with his team in a good way, and they like him. I mean, he's a liked teammate, which I think is very important.
Okay, let's talk a little about the opener against Tennessee Martin. From a fan standpoint, a very stressless game to watch.
Yeah, it was nice.
Tigers didn't show all their offense. I thought it was a good performance.
I thought it was a really solid performance. I think coming out of the gate, Drew demonstrated, along with the offense, complete control, tremendous confidence. They carried that over to the field. And I think the same thing was happening on defense. I mean, these weren't first-time starters. If anybody was a first-time starter, the veterans were carrying them along. And so I thought that was the biggest difference, that there was confidence and control throughout the game. There's only one big breakdown that I noticed as a fan, and that was the first touchdown pass where he was wide open, lack of communication or missed assignment in secondary, but otherwise very few penalties. There's probably more mistakes that coaches see, but from a fan's perspective, it was exactly what I thought it would be. A big win. I always like to see shutouts, but you got to learn along the way.
Let's look ahead now. Competition level ticks up a bit to Wyoming. What do you expect this week?
I think the biggest difference against Wyoming, I watched their first game and I was pretty impressed, but I think physically MU is going to have a big advantage there, and I think they'll wear them down on the line of scrimmage, or at least I anticipate it. Wyoming's a good program. It's had, moderate success. It's every now and then it'll sneak up and get 7 wins or something, but you have to look at the conference they're playing in. It's a little bit different, more open offense type. So I think if we, decide to just ground it out with our ground game, I think they'll really struggle with that, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see more of an equal 50-50 balance. I think, I like Dooley. I like what he's doing. I like that he's utilizing our running backs, because, those are 2 great weapons, and even the freshman, he showed that he can do some things. So I like the depth there, and I think we'll see more balance, and I think Drew is going to come up with the big plays when he needs to, and I think Dooley will call that when the situation presents itself.
I know you've known Barry Odom personally since he was a player. He has this program on the right track.
I think there's a lot of things that go on behind the scenes that people don't see. I think Kim Anderson was dealing with similar. You have to address some things that don't play out publicly, but you have to get the right kid in the locker room. You got to get the right mindset. And with any team, whether it's 12 total people on a basketball squad or 100 and some on a football, if the majority of them aren't agreeing on the approach and buying into what you're saying and how you're coaching, it's going to be very difficult to be successful. I think it's taken a little time. I think anytime you have a transition, there's going to be some struggle. But I think Barry's done a good job of establishing who he is, what's important to him, and he's getting the right type of kid in the locker room. I mean, there's no secrets what he expects. And I think a lot of Missouri coaches have similar. I know Coach Pinchton subscribes to that. We're seeing it with Coach Martin, Conzo Martin, Steve Beezer. Brian Smith has always had it in the wrestling program. And I think that's one consistency I'm seeing throughout Mizzou is just high-integrity coaches in every sport, and I think that's a real plus.
Brian, thanks for coming up. He's covered Mizzou for 2 decades.
Yep.
Your Drew Lock story, we can still find mutigers.com and Power Mizzou.
That's correct.
Okay,
thanks so much.
Thank you very much.
Right.
Follow him on Twitter at bnoon50. Next week, our guest speaker, Howard Richards, former Mizzou tackle, NFL player, and currently works for the athletic department. We'll be back here at the Flea Market. For more information, check us out at kctigerclub.com.